Hey, we're gonna chat today. That makes it sound like this is some dramatic, apology, like I should pull out a ukulele, all that. No. We're just gonna chat about querying because I just want to. I just sent off a book I've been working on since November-ish. Now that is with betas, and I'm just sitting there watching the Google Doc waiting for comments to come in, I had a realization that was like, maybe we shouldn't do that. And I realized I just hit the 50 queries. Sometimes I go down a dark rabbit hole of watching people's I just got a literary agent videos. When I want to be inspired, I watch one of those. But if I've just gotten 5 rejections, somehow they all happen on the same day, always. And then I see somebody talking about, oh my gosh, I only sent 3 query letters and I got an agent. And it's my dream agent, and now I have a book deal. And I'm like, that's so great for you, and I really do love that for you, and I want all the success for you, but it's not for me right now, apparently. This is not that video. I have this vision when I get an agent and I make that video, I'm hoping to point people back to this video. I'm hoping to start it with oh my gosh, I got a literary agent. Listen, if you're querying right now, go watch this video. And she'll give you some encouragement, and then you'll come watch me. So if you're watching this from there, I can't even process that, and I'm so happy for me. But that's not what we're talking about. Today we're talking about how horrible it is. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna talk through what my querying process has looked like, what my successes and failures have looked like, and then also just my general encouragement. I was gonna say advice, but I don't really feel very qualified to give you advice on querying because I haven't gotten a literary agent, but I feel like I could give advice on the mentality of how to move on from querying. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. So I finished my book near the end of June. I had about 2 rounds of beta readers, I think. And then in September of last year, I sent my first query. So I spent the summer finishing up revisions, doing copy edits, and then writing a query letter, writing a synopsis, sort of. September 11th. What a day to choose, Alyssa. Okay. It was on September 11th. It's memorable. I'll always remember that. So if you have not queried yet and you haven't really looked into it, I would recommend just kind of looking around a little bit at what materials are required, because I would say 70% of the forms that I fill out are roughly the same questions. And then there's a few that you get just a couple times. And then every once in a while they'll throw in why did you submit to this agency? As if we're all not just blindly submitting to anybody who will listen. I know some people are very, very intentional about who they query to. And I think that that's great. But I also don't really do that. I look very briefly at the agency. If I recognize one title from the agency, I'm like, okay, they've got something. This agency is reputable, right? And then I look at agents, and then I pick, and then I query, and it takes me maybe 5 minutes per query because I have all those materials. I have one Google Doc, it has my summary and my blurb and the 2 different variations of query letters depending on what the form asks me for, and my pitch line, and my 1-page synopsis and my 5-page synopsis, and all the different variations. I have it all just on one form. And then I have 3 different documents that are the first 3 chapters, the first 5 pages, the first 10 pages, and then the first 20 pages, which is, I have only submitted that once or twice. Really, there's not really much rhyme or reason to it. And again, I don't know why you would listen to me because I have not gotten a literary agent yet. But at the end of the day, it is such a numbers game. It's ridiculous. I heard this analogy once. Imagine every month or week, depending on how popular of an agent you are, 500 books get dropped at your doorstep. And they're like, hey, read all of these, let us know what your thoughts are. You can only pick one. And then in a month, another 500 are gonna be dropped on your doorstep. Most literary agents only take 2 clients a year. It really helps me to think about the number side of it sometimes. Sometimes I get really overwhelmed by how staggering the numbers are, and then other times it's actually very reassuring. You see that rejection come through, and it's oh, I poured my heart and soul out to you, and you said just no with a form rejection that I know that you gave everybody else. it's such a blip, and I know that really, really sucks. It sucks. I know it does. But it's also like, that's why I don't get so caught up on like, I'm only gonna submit to these 5 agents because these are the only ones who can fit my project directly. Because from what I've heard, if you get an offer, you can use that as a tool. So even if you get an offer and then you read like about the agent and you meet the agent, you're like, this ain't it. Having that offer will like be a tool of leverage for you where you can tell all the other agents that you've queried, like, hey, I just got an offer on this. Because from the literary agent perspective, if somebody's telling you like, oh, they got an offer, that means, oh, this person, somebody wants this, maybe I would want it too. Then it becomes competitive, right? So then they're gonna be more likely to spend more time looking at it. I don't know any of this. This is just what I tell myself. Anyway, let's go back to the journey. I sent out about 10 to really fast responders. One tip I would have would be to get the pro version of Query Tracker. I think it's like $25 for a year. What I liked about that is that you can see where you are in the queue, and you can also see just a lot more data. And what I will do to search for agents is I will put all of the like categories. So I'll put like, okay, I need an agent who's accepting in my country, which is America, accepts my genre. And then what I'll do is I'll search by most recently requested or most recently responded. So those are people who I know are actively responding to queries. And then I will, honestly, I just look. Those are the people who are responding and reading and looking. I have everything to a point where once I decide I'm gonna query someone, it'll take me 2 minutes to query them. So I'll query them, not even really thinking about it. I mean, I look at the name, so I know I'm spelling the name right and all that good stuff, but I'm not like reading their whole bio and like getting my hopes up and like picturing myself with them, because that is such an emotional burden. It feels so personal, but it's like truly not. It's truly a business, and it sucks to feel that way about your art, but that is like, I work in video in my day job. And removing art from business is something that I have to do all the time. Like when I get revisions back on a project, I'm like, how dare you not like this video that I sent you? And then I'm like, wait a minute, no, I'm making this video for this client. So that means that they're the ones who get to decide if it's right or not. They're the ones who get to decide if it's good, if it's what they're looking for, if it's what'll be useful to their plan and to their strategy, and if it's worth their money. So it's not about me and what I think looks good. It's about what is the client paying for and what are they asking for. It's helpful to think about it that way. It's a little disheartening. It's like, oh, publishing is just a big money grab. Like they just want their money. But if you think about it from an agent perspective, when they're going into queries, at the end of the day, like they are looking for people that they know they can sell and they can represent and they can give them a career. Because do you really want an agent who's taking everybody? Do you really want an agent who just takes you for one book and then won't give you a career because they are just constantly taking new projects? And then I also think about, well, when I do get a literary agent, that person like chose me and thinks that they can do a good job representing me and thinks that my project and my work and me as a writer is going to make it. As disheartening as it is right now to get all these rejections, it makes every victory so much greater. So let's move into the victories, because there have been a few. I had a request for the first 50 pages, I believe, very early on. I think it was like in that first batch. I got it from an agent who requests a lot, actually, and that was kind of my intention, was to query people who I know respond a lot, because then I can see like, do I even make it past that first threshold of being requested at all, right? And I sent it, and then I got like a very, I think it was still a form rejection. It was like slightly personalized, and that was in October. I remember I was on a girls' weekend, and I was like just checking my phone and my email every second, because I was like, what if I have to send the whole thing like right now? And like, I need to respond within 5 minutes. Like, it was very exciting because you look at the odds, and that's what I liked about Query Tracker Pro, is that you look at the, not sponsored, like you look at the stats and it's, 100 people queried that day and 1 person got requested. Like you can see how far you've broken through. I didn't query in November, starting in November through January, because oftentimes people are closed. I've just heard that's not a great time to query. I was busy, I was doing Nano, I just was not in a headspace. And then I think starting in February, I queried again. And what my strategy was when I got a rejection in, I would just send out another one. So at any given time, I have between like 7 and 10 queries out. And then when I receive responses, that's a cue to me to go and submit more. And once you get past those fast responders, it's a huge jump. It goes from like, oh, response within a week to response within 6 to 8 weeks. So I went a long time without really hearing anything. And then, you know, every once in a while I just send out another query, even if I hadn't gotten a response back, just to like remind myself that I was querying and remind myself that this project existed and remind myself that I was on the track to publishing, as slow going as it may be. Then in June, I got another request. And this time it was a full request. I went back into my book and I was like, holy crap, like I feel so much stronger about the writing that I'm doing now. And so I read it and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll send this. Like, I feel like I want to do another pass. So I sent it, and then about 2 weeks, well, and then it said in the request, it was like, give us like 3 months to respond. I'm like, great. But a couple weeks later, I got a rejection on it. Shocking, we all know. But I remember this was a couple weeks ago, and I was driving my sister, who's like 15, down to the lake, and we were jamming out to All Too Well 10-minute version. And we had to get gas, and so we stopped at the gas station, and I just like chronically check my email. It's actually kind of a problem. And I saw that she had responded, and I was like, this is gonna be the moment. This is when I'm gonna get a literary agent. Like, I need to, whatever, all this stuff, all the things that go through your head. And I read it and I was so happy because it referenced things that were in my book, which was crazy to me. Like, obviously I knew that I had submitted this full manuscript to this literary agent. And so like, obviously they're gonna read it. Like, why would they not read it? But in my mind, she was saying things about my setting and about my characters and about my literary voice. And I was like, I'm sorry, you read this? You read this book that I wrote. What she said was, and this was kind of my fear, you know when you have this fear and then someone just like hits the fear on the head very subtly and you're like, okay. So my story takes place in a college campus, right? But it's marketed as, I marketed it as YA because the voice is YA. And so what the literary agent essentially said, she actually said this, was that my literary voice was great. And I shared it with multiple of my colleagues and we all agreed. And I was like, multiple of your colleagues? I was like, I could not process that people had read this and that they all thought my literary voice was great. And then I was like, well, maybe they were just saying that to be nice, but I don't know. And she said, but we all kind of agree that editorially it would be difficult to market because though it's written in a YA fashion, the characters are in college, right? But again, it was so exciting because I knew the odds. Like, I had been in that form rejection pile for so many agents, and to get that request was just kind of wild to me. Yeah, and so I've sent out a couple more since then. Haven't really gotten anything back. So it goes. I'm really not focused on that right now. But then I see these stories of people who are like, oh, I queried for 1 week and I got 5 requests, and I'm like, well, obviously you're doing something right. And that's great. And those outlier stories are gonna happen. And I've shared this before, but my eventual plan is, with the knowledge that it is such a numbers game and it is so statistically unlikely, my plan is to write a new book every year. If I continue to do that, I think it'll be easier to compare, like, am I getting better? And then also there's a higher chance that it'll click with somebody. And then the other plus side of that is when I do get a literary agent, then I'll have this backlist. And that's a very hopeful plan for me. And your plan doesn't need to be the same, but I would recommend having some sort of strategy, because otherwise you're just looking into this abyss of rejections, and it's all you can see for your future is like, if I don't get a miracle email about this project, that's it for me. That's the best piece of querying advice that I got, was to start something new. So I started querying, and then I immediately started outlining the book that I wrote in Nano. So my second piece of advice would be to celebrate your rejections. And I know that that sounds horrible, and if you just got a rejection, you're like, really, Alyssa, you want me to celebrate that? Yes, I do. Because if I've seen anything from publishing, is that really the only constant is rejection. Everybody has a different success story. Everybody has a different path that they took to get there, a different number of drafts it took, a different number of times they went on submission, everybody's journey to success was different. But what was constant was rejection. And that happens at every stage. It happens when querying. It happens on submission. It happens by like the collective peers. Maybe Book Talk hates your book. And so your first rejection from like the real world, you should be celebrating that. That's the first of many, which maybe is sad, but also it's proof that you're doing the thing. There's so many people who don't finish a book, who sit on their finished books and don't query them. And if that's you and you have a different goal for your project, or you realize that your project isn't working, like that's fine. I'm not judging you at all. But if you are facing a lot of rejection right now in the query trenches, there are so many people who don't even get there. So you need to celebrate that. But if you're in the trenches right now, I feel you. It does not define you. If you are getting nothing but rejections, it's okay. Maybe this isn't the book, but maybe it is. So keep on querying, but start something new, because you're only gonna get better. You're truly only gonna get better. I truly do have faith that it's not gonna come until I'm ready. And it might wait a little bit longer than when I'm ready, but it's not gonna come until I'm ready, and it will come at the right time in my life. And so I really hope that that's soon, but if it's not, actually, let's just check my email, because who knows? Wouldn't that be crazy, everyone? No. Nothing, just up from my beta readers. Sarah, thank you so much for beta reading for me. You're doing such an excellent job. This is exactly what I needed. There's a form in my description if you want to beta read for me. Tear out my heart. Sarah's not doing that, but she's great. I'll see you in the next one. Keep on going.